they go?
Game of Fiction.
They said he couldn't read this many books. He would never get it done. They make me sick to my stomach.
You are now listening to Game of Fiction by Rare Candy Industries.
Episode 2 of Gravity's Rainbow, special edition of Game of Fiction here. I'm joined by Bernard T. Joy. If you are just clicking on this as the first one, this is the second episode, so go back one. That link is in the description. Watch them like a playlist and stuff. This would be a very good companion piece as you read along with one of the toughest novels to kind of parse through, I should say, and kind of get meaning out of. But we will find that in there. So, of course, like I said, joined by Bernard T. Joy. He visits Faulkner's house, all of these cool things, travels the world doing all that stuff. But, of course, these are all recorded in the same time, all of these episodes. Time is not real, as Pynchon reminds us in this novel. So how are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing excellent. Yeah. It's been interesting to get back to reading a bit of Pynchon because of I was like part of the way through, about halfway through Mason and Dixon when I had to go off, like you said, to one of my trips, one of Mississippi trips, and it's not a book to carry like when you're traveling, I don't think so. I left it behind. So it was nice to sort of get to working on some of the material for this episode, just going back to Gravity's Rainbow again. And like we were saying last time, it doesn't matter how many times you go back. It's almost like you're walking into the novel fresh all over again because you notice new things.
It's weird, man. So since we've been recording these, I've finished the novel. As people know, in the first episode, I was about more or less halfway done with it, but I finished it, and it's been a little while. I'm constantly reading something, and it's not always in the kind of realm of Pynchon at all. Like I'm constantly going back and forth between Michael Crichton, all of these other things that are just that should wipe the slate clean a lot of times. And ironically, right now I'm reading some Faulkner, but just in all of this. But this book has stayed with me. Like everything I read, there's Gravity's Rainbow is just hovering, like the specter of it is in the back of like this back part of my mind. Is it a curse or something? Like now I've read it, can I ever forget it? It's crazy. Like I love this though. It's kind of like when I read Brothers Karamazov. Like it's just one of these things you spend so much time with, and you use every ounce of your conscience to kind of get through these things that they stick with you. And I think that's ultimately the staying power of a book like this. We could talk about power. We're going to talk about all these really tough to talk about things in this book, but I think the ultimate thing is this, especially with Pynchon, is the staying power of him, you know?
Absolutely. The people like that, Dostoevsky or Faulkner or Pynchon, they're all doing something so unique that you do. Like they color novels that you read after them by whomever, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump right into it. And I think a good place to start is our friend Chicherin, who we haven't really talked about yet. That's how you say his name, right? Chicherin?
Either Chicherin or maybe Chicherin.
Yeah, Chicherin. Yeah.
It's one of those weird sounds because it's obviously got a silent T, so it's got like a noise as well. Like you know, sometimes you see the name Chekhov with a TC, so it's a sound.
Well, Russian names. I mean, you talk about Dostoevsky, and you're like, wait, that's the same guy. You know, you're reading, and it's like the guy's got like 5 different names in the novel. You're like, oh my gosh, Alyosha, just all of these like all of these different names. So, but yes, the Chicherin is this. It's a character. Admittedly, when I was reading the novel, I understood his function in the novel, but I knew there was like one more layer of something that I couldn't quite get through, that I said, what am I? And it turns out a lot of that is historical context, as we've been talking through this. But Chicherin is in Central Asia. Now, it's not when we first meet him, though. And that's the problem with books like this, is you kind of forget certain parts of the book. There's that massive awesome like espionage climactic scene in the first third of the novel of him just blowing through that event with like a tank and stuff. And I just like forgot that was him, because you get him so much later. There's so much happens in between there that you just kind of go, oh wait, that's him. And so that's where we first meet him, but we don't really get a peek behind the hood until the whole Kyrgyzstan saga of that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a Eastern Bloc. This is the whole Eastern Bloc section, which admittedly I am not well versed in that type of in what was happening during there, like Central Asia and the Soviet Union basically just taking over. Basically, look, America takes over this side of the country of the world, we take over this side of the world, and let's see what happens when we meet in the middle, you know. And that's kind of Chicherin is kind of this agent of that, and he's kind of this like James Bond, but also like brutal military guy, but also very smart, you know, very smart and very well read.
Yeah, well, he's well read. It's this sort of thing I think Pynchon is doing throughout his whole body of work. This sort of analysing at what place does literature stand in the systems of containment and control that that nations and these massive superpowers like Russia or the United States during the Cold War, you know, when the novel was written. Or the Second World War leading up to that. How do these powers use things like literature? Because, you know, literature's got this sort of, for people perhaps that don't study it closely, it's got this sort of benign, nicey-picey, you know, it's poetry. It's there's something nice about it. There's something like personal, speaks to the inner personal self and what. But literature can be that, but it's also a main means of control and containment and exploitation of people. So Pynchon's playing again with that. You know, like last time we were talking about all these dynamics that are in Pynchon, all these sort of bringing polar opposites together and making the argument for why one polar opposite is actually, you know, the other polar opposite is a sort of he's a deconstructive writer. He deconstructs things, and I think he does that through Chicherin being, you know, Chicherin is an agent of the Likvez, and that was the bureau of the Soviet Union that went around Russia and the Eastern Bloc in general. You know, he's in Central Asia as we find him at, you know, his proper introduction to the novel, and as part of this bureau. It was really to combat illiteracy, you know. So, you know, it's got this very noble MO to go out to places that were very illiterate. You know, Russia throughout much of the 20th century has high rates of illiteracy.
Yeah, Castro's Cuba, that's a big thing too, right?
Yeah, exactly. So trying to sort of ameliorate the illiteracy rates, and you think, well, this sounds very, very noble. Until you realize that, you know, the combating of illiteracy all throughout Europe and all throughout the world, the history of combating illiteracy has always come with the imposition of certain ideas, certain ways that you must read things. A very interesting point, when some of the first campaigns ever to combat illiteracy, British campaigns, I believe, they were put forward in order that the masses could read the pamphlets for joining the army, not draft in those days, but military pamphlets for joining the army. So it was this sort of thing. If we're going to get like a soldiery class or people to go and fight and die in our wars, we have to teach them to read first. So it's this sort of exploitation attached to literacy that you see, and that's really Chicherin's characters kind of stands in for that a lot.
Oh, and you know what's interesting that you bring that up, and it makes me think now I'm not going to compare what's happening now to what's happening back then, but like you think about now, there's such a onus on like media literacy, like where, you know, just this thing where it's like no, I studied this, therefore this movie is about my political ideology, and you're like, well, no, it's not. it needs to be about that for you to enjoy it, and this kind of, you just see these people that it's like this race to plant your flag on top of certain media nowadays, as this, as that, as whatever. And that's what's beautiful about Pynchon, is kind of this, look, we've talked about it in the first episode. We know he leans left, if not fully entrenched in left stuff, but he is way more perceptive than anybody I know now that's on the left, though, where he's able to kind of look and go, all right, everybody kind of does the same. Power is like kind of just power at the end of the day. And the way to achieve power, like, people might take alternate routes, but it is all for the same goal. It is all for the same thing. And power operates this way: inversions and also triumph. There's these like kind of triumphs, and, well, look, our country reads, our country does this, but don't you dare let me catch you reading any of this, like it's this kind of, Pynchon's really good at that, I think. And I think that's why him and the Bolaño types really like outlast, I think we're going to be reading stuff like this for way longer than even now, and this book is 50 years old now ish. We're going to be reading it well beyond this point, because, like we said, you still see people trying to race to this kind of like media literacy, cultural consensus.
Yeah, and you're right to bring that up. I mean, I think now it's become, it's metastasized into so many other different areas. I mean, when Pynchon's writing, or when a writer like Don DeLillo, they do very similar things with things like television, for instance. Always shows up television, but that would have been, one of these fringe or the cutting edge concern of their time. What do we do when people are abandoning books and moving more towards television, and this sort of idea so that's a literacy technology. It's a technological a branch of telecommunications that's sort of coming in and sort of imperializing people's lives. It's sort of taking this colonial control over people's lives, and you see it by how much screen time people get, and in those days, television would have been the big thing, but nowadays it's sort of metastasized into things that we can hardly even find words for. Our obsession with AI, and students now use AI more than anything for handing in work. University students do it, and the internet is a massive one, and nowadays things like you're saying, media literacy, all this talk that's bringing itself slowly into law about misinformation, disinformation.
Yeah,
these are all like ways of maintaining and controlling some form of power over a extremely dangerous world, because we've really got a tiger by the tail, and how information is taken in, how people understand the world they're living in, changes the way they act, and it's an extremely dangerous thing if it goes wrong. But then at the same time, this containment and control in itself is a wrong as well.
We're going to get you right back to the episode, but I just wanted to let you guys know of a few other things we offer at Rare Candy Industries. We have a Substack with free and paid subscription options. Free subscribers get access to all written content. That includes Bob's Red Pill. That's the best thing going on the internet right now. Trust me. Paid subscribers get full access to our premium episode feed. And that's just every episode we don't necessarily want to share with the general public, if you know what I'm saying. Again, that's rarecandy.substack.com. We also have merch. That link's a little long for me to say right now, but go to the description, go to our merch store, and find a shirt that's right for you. We have Rare Candy shirts, Dr. Bronner soap label shirts, Rishi mushroom shirts, all types of stuff there. Check it out. There's got to be something for you. And lastly, check us out on social media. On Instagram, we're Rare Candy Pod, but on Twitter, we're at Rare Candy Pod 1. All right, enough of that. Let's get you back into the episode.
Yeah, I agree. I like the chaos of freedom of information. I accept the chaos of it. I know if I was trying to lead a country of billions and millions and millions of people and trying to ever expand that nation, yeah, I get it. I understand the tool of trying to regulate that, but I ultimately think it comes with kind of poor consequences, and I agree.
we've had a very good case in point in the UK.
Mhm,
You may not have noticed, but in the UK, as of last week, I believe, you have to sign in for pornography.
I
So
saw that.
you have to like, so it's like facial recognition and all the rest of it. And you know, a lot of people in Britain are saying, so again, it's got that sort of thing. It's got it's definitely got a noble
Right.
it seems to have a noble MO about it. You know, it's like it's really for the protection of children, and so they are not seeing inappropriate material. But at the same time, lots of people are saying this could be a foot in for you know biometric controls and all sorts of things.
Sure.
And Pynchon is very, I mean, he's very prescient because he's very, you know, he's thinking about this a lot, and he thinks about it through this character Chicherin and how, you know, him coming in and doing this sort of, he's teaching a newly developed alphabet to the people of Central Asia, and you think to yourself, well, this can only be for the good of those people. But if you look at how the people are described, you know, they've already got a language. They've already got a language of like touch and silence, even is a big thing. Like when they hold their silences. And then all this stuff that we were talking about last time about the psychic dimension. You know, he's very interested in psychic phenomena and like psychic technologies. And you know, there's a character, the Russian woman Jelena, in the novel. She's like a central. She's Russian, but she's sort of assimilated into this Central Asian culture that really reveres the ability of the mind to see beyond what's just written down or what's didactic or what's you know, too how would we say it, too you know, too straightforwardly rational. You know, you can write down a sentence and it means a certain thing and it's got a certain context. But you know, they've got the mind is a messier and much freer thing than that. And they are sort of cognizant of that. And in a way, Chicherin is there not to teach language, but to dumb down the population so that they can be controlled. Like there is binary answers to questions. There are linguistic binary answers to questions. And this magic, for the want of a better word, that the people of Central Asia have is being slowly eroded and obliterated by that work of the Soviet Bureau. So it's an extremely interesting dynamic, really.
And you couple like the kind of the specter of Chicherin in terms of Slothrop's adventure when he's in, I think it's at this point Eastern Europe, when he's kind of going through there and he's with this girl Gelly Tripping or something, and she's a witch, and I mean, again, is she or isn't she? We don't know. I mean, it's kind of up in the air, but at the end of the day, Chicherin is very much interested in her for that degree, and just having these kind of like psychic outposts all around Europe and Central Asia, right? Like you have like these kind of psychic outposts where Slothrop, like, of course he's going to stumble into that. Like, of course he is, because Chicherin has this like genuine interest in Slothrop, almost like a Deus Ex Machina kind of like situation, this kind of like inverted version of yourself, but also not really. There's almost a horseshoe theory element of the two of them. Like very interesting stuff with him. But he's also the first guy, or not the first guy, but he probably gets the closest to the phenomena, right, of the novel. The Kurgit's Light, I think is the thing. Light, which is so like when you first, you know, Pynchon's really good at teasing you with this. You're like, oh, it's going to become Philip K. Dick. And then you're like, nah, it's really just a concept, you know, and it's really a concept. But we talk about the light and we just tend to think of it. It's like, well, we know what the light is. I mean, these bombs, these are huge. These massive lights that are you know, they're followed by a sound, but it's kind of the first thing that you see. And it's, you know, basically power is functioning in this sense as the new god, which is not a novel concept at all. But the way Pynchon does it is that it's, look, I am bringer of death, I am bringer of light, and just the psychedelic aspect of a bomb, which people have made these. I mean, you can believe it or disbelieve it, but like if you're in Hiroshima when the bomb drops, there's a lot of people that went to a psychedelic state of that. They said there was a new portal opened when that opened up. Like there's people that believe these things, and you look at the way the world has gone since the dropping of that. It's kind of tough to. You're like, wow, we really did usher in a new society with that thing. So what Pynchon? I like Pynchon. He operates on both planes of the no, we dropped a bomb and that's the way the world works now. Or, hey, we dropped a bomb and it opened something up, you know, like, and I love that he kind of, and maybe people disagree. I think that's very, very up for interpretation, but I love when he encounters that light, or just when he talks about that light, like it was some X-Files episode. Like, I really love that.
Yeah, and it's like always associated with it always seems to be associated with these angels as well that we spoke about in the last episode, like the angels being sort of a mystical or religious symbol that perfectly pairs with the very mundane and very secular image of the bomb. You know, because the bomb is an artifact of science. It comes to us purely through the rationalistic process. It's a very mundane and very worldly item. But in Pynchon's hands, he associates it continually with angels. Both in Chicherin and Slothrop see angels, and they sort of associate it with the bomb. And this Kyrgyz light as well. That's a similar thing, you know. When both Slothrop and Chicherin at different points in the novel see this light or sort of come into contact with it, and I think it's just as you say, you know. There's Pynchon gives you the straightforward binary answer, you know, so you can just say the light is the rocket, you know, or you know, the light is that massive a
cataclysm, almost even a cataclysmic event of biblical proportions in a way, you know, like to start the new, you know, 00000 world, you know, to kind of start that, like this, there's just like a level of anarchism to it to usher in a new regime. Yeah,
so blast everything away and start again. That sort of area. But you know, he gives you that answer, and it's very clear. I mean, like when Chicherin actually encounters the light, he's told about it a lot. You know, the local peoples are telling him about this,
right?
This sort of thing that's in their lore, singing about it, but when he comes into contact with it, it's like what happens for Chicherin, because Chicherin is a complete materialist. He's on that level of the worldly. So when he encounters the light, all that it does is it makes him pass out. He faints.
A threshold, like a threat. There's a threshold that he just kind of
he can't pass. He can't pass that threshold, and they sort of revive him over a long period of time, get him back. But he never. It's clear that he never actually fully experiences that light in its sort of spiritual dimension, what it could do, what it could be. For him, it's sort of beyond all his frames of reference. So it just makes him faint. He loses consciousness because his consciousness can't go to where the light wants to take him. And then after he's experienced the light, it actually says, about as clear as you want to get that the light is the rocket, it says, but he will continue to look for this light in the form of the rocket. So he search for the rocket, he's looking for this light thing. So the rocket then is not a mundane, it has like it has a mundane body, it has something that you can point to, this is the rocket. But it has a spiritual being that's so much deeper than that. And you know, that's a real mystery. That takes a lot of thinking and going into what is it that makes, what is this Kyrgyz light and this rocket, what is its spiritual dimension? You know, and I think that the fact that Pynchon pairs so many things together, so he pairs together the actual science of light. So the science of light goes all the way through Pynchon's work. So does all the psychic stuff, right? There's lots of mentions of psychic phenomena. So light, psychic phenomena, violence itself, right? All these things seem to be associated with the rocket. So I think if you sort of triangulate it or whatever, if you think, well, what have all these things got in common? What is it that's telling us about the rocket? And I think where you come to is all these things, the imagination, the psychic world of imagination, literature itself as well is in there, right? The power of literature,
Sure.
the power of light, and the power of the rocket and violence is all the power of reshaping the world.
Yeah.
You come into a room that's entirely dark and you switch the light on.
Yeah.
You've changed the room. Like
Mhm.
you've made things apparent that were not apparent. You've made things that were invisible visible.
Ah.
And in that sense, you've completely altered your world. Same as if you went into your room with a baseball bat and smashed it all up. You've altered and reshaped the world. You see? So I think
that's fantastic. No, you're absolutely correct. Like, because it's so, that part of the novel feels like this like side plot, kind of like what like is this is obviously an origin story in a way, like, or at least the where Pynchon wants his origin to start in a way, and you're getting this like kind of we later get the Franz Pokler origin story, which is far worse. But yeah, it's horrific. But you also get you get this, and I love what Pynchon does so well with these guys is like it becomes like geopolitical, all of these things, but it's still just like a guy with hashish in the desert with like a sidekick, and I just love that he reverts to like classic media, for some of his characters, just classical, like almost cowboy in the desert. I mean, we're in Central Asia here, but it's like cowboy in the desert, like Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas kind of stuff of these like, and again, he includes the hashish in there. And I think the hashish functions as a mystery, where it's like, well, this guy could be high out of his mind, but also we don't believe that. Yeah, we don't believe that. And he leaves you that out. But if you take that out, you took bait, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just, I mean, and it's in that same dynamic, isn't it? Like, because he's very interested as well in drug taking.
Yeah,
he's got lots of drugs. Pynchon's got lots of drugs, and I mean, I'm not that au fait about drugs or drug taking, so I'm not. Sometimes there'll be drugs, and I'm like, did you invent that drug, or is that a real drug? I don't know. So it's like, but I know ganja exists.
Hey, I'm from the Bay Area. They did open experiments for LSD at like Berkeley and stuff. So like it's wild when you think of something that could function as this like hippy dippy dancing in the desert thing, and you go, yeah, that was made in a lab by a guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's all this like Timothy Leary
right, of course.
World as well that Pynchon's involved in, and it's the sort of, and it's the same idea. If you've got if you utterly alter your psychic state through the use of drugs, and the world alters as a result of that, I think Pynchon is asking very sensibly, at what point have you actually altered the world? I mean, is there an objective change in reality because your brain chemistry changes? And it's a really old question in American literature too. I mean, Mark Twain is famous for having said, or having examined the possibility that dreams are real, right?
Yeah.
So he would constantly dream about a girl, a very young girl. I must say that's one of the big issues with Mark Twain. But he would have this dream about a very young girl, and he sort of got round in his head to thinking, what makes my dream any less real than my waking reality? What makes it? So he would philosophize on that, and I think that's something that is it comes through in lots of literature, and I think literary people are sort of best placed and to be interested in that question, because when you are using nothing but ink and paper and you put them together in such a way that you actually do create, in a sense, a world, a shared world with the reader as well, you're altering the reader's brain chemistry, and you're altering as well the world through your imagination. So I think it's interesting to ask then how much of the inner state, how much of the psychic state bleeds out into the world in general. And,
I don't know if we'll never get the answer. I don't think either. That's Pynchon, right? You don't get the answer. Like, now the ending of this novel is, which we'll talk about in the next one, is chilling. I mean, it's like a chilling thing, and you do get more answers, I think, than a typical Pynchon novel. But nonetheless, you brought up something interesting about the Kurgat's Light, where being a materialist like Chicherin, he kind of hits this threshold and blacks out, so he never quite experiences it, right? Like, he's not open to that. And my wife is the kind of person that I think is in my marriage that's susceptible to the deja vu, for example, right? Like, deja vu, it's very common. A lot of people say they have it, where the concept of like you're reliving something that happened already in a dream. I mean, David Lynch made a lot of David Lynch made a very big series about that, or at least with that as its central one of its central themes. But my wife, when she says, she'll stop, she'll be making the bed, making the bed or something, she'll just stop, and I go, "What's wrong?" She goes, "Whew, deja vu." And I'll say, "What happened?" She's like, "Nothing." It's the idea. It's like, it's not that she doesn't want to tell me. It's just, it happened right there. And I think she lost herself for a second, and she really can't, and it kind of feels like that's what's happening with Chicherin. When you think about these things, like, it might have already happened. These things might have all already happened. I mean, the way he plays with time, and we'll talk about it with the submarine aspect of it, where you really learn about time manipulation, where, I mean, you could go as far as, but these could all be very different timelines in these books, that in this novel that often reads like a linear adventure novel. You're kind of going like, yeah, but when is this happening? A lot of times. And you kind of wonder. And I think that's why you have to kind of get rid of all your thresholds when you read Pynchon, because you'll get way more out of it.
Yeah, I think that's so important for thinking about this, because, like, well, your story with your wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that story, that's kind of the same thing that happens with Chicherin in a way, because what you're asking your wife when you say, she's had this really weird, if anyone's had deja vu, it's a really weird experience, and it takes you out your body, and it's odd, right? And then you're asking her, well, explain it in so many words, put it into some sort of discrete packet of information that I can understand. And I don't blame her. She says, how can I do that? I mean,
she wouldn't know. She literally is like, she's like, I'm not trying to be rude or keep you out of this. It wasn't, there's no secret. She's like, I just can't tell you. I don't know. Yeah.
It's interesting, because Chicherin, the same thing happens. When he's hearing about the Kyrgyz Light, one of the places he hears it from this is really interesting to me, that he hears it from an Akin. An Akin is a Central Asian improvisational poet. Right. And I think it's really important that's that kind of poet. So this isn't. Yeah. This would be an Akin is someone, for the delight of the company. They get around the campfire, and they will give you a poem, but it's all improvised on the spot, and it's all oral. None of it's written down. And this is really interesting, because you've got this Chicherin character who is writing everything down. In fact, when the song's given to us in the book, this Akin is singing a poem, and Chicherin is actually recording it, and he's actually writing it down in so many words. Because Chicherin doesn't realize that what the Akin's doing when he's in that moment of poetic creation is he's beyond the place of putting things down in so many words in a really discreet and really rational way.
Yeah.
Because that's where the Kyrgyz Light comes from. If you don't have that power of momentary improvisation, what I'm saying right now, if you don't have that power, you're never going to get there.
Wow.
And it says in that little song, and I recommend, by the way, I think people skip Pynchon's songs, but they're the most interesting bits sometimes. And this song is interesting because he says, but if you would not be born, as he's talking about actually seeing the light, right? And he says, but if you would not be born, then stay by your warm red fire, right? Yeah. And I think what he means there is to see that light. If you're actually going to see it, you're going to be reborn. Like, it's going to flush out all that knowledge and information you've got in your head, all that discrete and rational stuff that you've been running your life by is going to be gone. And you're going to step into a new immediate reality, something that's really happening to you right now. and it will reshape who you are. And that is, and it's like that. So if you would not be born, so if you're not ready for that, stay by your warm red fire. So that's kind of like the, when you're asking your wife for give me it in so many words, you're in the warm red fireplace. You're there. But she's not really. She's like, no, sorry, can't do it.
Yeah.
Warm there, right?
Nah, you're right. You're right. And now I will say, for anybody, what I was talking about earlier with this kind of non-linear time stuff that I was talking about, anybody who's looking for like a good movie to play with these kind of time things that I think is done in a really artful way is Mirror by Tarkovsky. I don't know if you've seen that film, but it's kind of one of those ones, like you said, get rid of the threshold, just sit down, don't follow, is that no, just sit there and let it wash over you.
Yeah.
And it's basically a childhood and current day thing, and they're all told in like these kind of like almost like Faulkner type, like, okay, I remember the way the willows were blowing. I remember the way this was happening. And then there's like a thing happening that's not really highlighted, but it's an interaction. And you're not sure if this is happening as a child, and you're not sure if this is happening to him as an adult, because it's kind of like memory doesn't work that way. Like memory, these really like core memories kind of are timeless a little bit. You kind of like, you remember like certain things like, oh, I remember when I went to that baseball game when I was 13, but you might, but for the most part, like you'd be like, no, but I remember this really awful thing that happened in my house, or this really odd moment. Like it oscillates back and forth between like a grown man and a child in the same memory. And Beau is Afraid kind of works this way as well. And, but Mirror by Tarkovsky, if anyone's looking for that, it's kind of Pynchonian time, I would say, is kind of what's happening in there for a good one for sure. So I think I found it very enjoyable. I can understand why a lot, but if you're listening to this, I feel like you'll enjoy it. Basically, I think we're not, you guys aren't a bunch of people that sit around the fire, as my colleague here would say. You guys are in for it all,
ready to be reborn.
Yeah, no, but I think that is 100% true, like about this. So I guess we gotta talk about our friend Pokler guy. Oh gosh, the most for me far and away the most
area now.
The most disturbing part of the book for me personally, and not for the reasons that I think a lot of people are ready for. There's by this point in the book, you've seen quite a bit of pedophilia. Let's just say that much. So it's like, to get it again, it's not this, whoa, like you get, by this point you've bought into the novel, like, and I think Pynchon knows that. You go, okay, look, we're on page 500 at this point or whatever it is, like you're in for the ride. I'm in control. So, in this way, which is funny because it is a novel ultimately about power and what power can do to the not honest person, but the put your head down and work person, right? Which that's what Franz Pokler is. He loves science. I mean, there was an old Facebook page back in the day where you could like it and it would say, I fucking love science. And it would just be like these oddly satisfying videos, very materialist. This is what trauma is. Trauma is actually this in your brain doing this. And we've solved trauma, and like, that's kind of what a lot of these, and Franz Pokler definitely thinks that way. Now, he is a perfect soldier. And I know he's not a soldier, but he is a perfect soldier for what needs to be done for the forever war, new regime, birth of the new world, the man-made biblical cataclysm that is trying to be caused by Weissman and these other evil people. So Franz Pokler, he is working in Nordhausen, and he's just toiling away at his work. Again, at the end of the day, if someone tells you, hey, make sure this does that on this thing, you kind of forget what you're building. Not forget, but it's easy to say, oh, well, I'm just welding something onto a thing. That's all I'm doing, right? Yeah. And we see this constantly. People just going like, well, I didn't know I was doing that. All they said was take this document to that guy, or something. That's all I did. Following orders, right? In that way. Now, over time, when you're constantly following orders, you forget what morals are. You forget what your basic human function is on Earth. Albeit you are doing your dream job in a way. You are making something that no one else can make. You are very essential to the thing in building this massive bomb and a rocket, I should say. And they his daughter Ilsa is at a camp, is at a what we think is a prison camp, and we end up knowing that it is a prison camp. But he has given visitation rights to his daughter, who might not be his daughter. Now, you in the notes, you put something interesting. I didn't know that this was debatable, debated amongst people.
Well, I don't. How debatable it is, I don't know. But
I don't think. I think it's pretty cut and dry, personally. But
let's debate it.
I think a lot of people don't want it to be what it is. I think that's a problem with it, where it's like, guys, like, it's not, Pynchon is not advocating for pedophilia when this happens. Like, and that's the problem. Like, it's quite clear that he's not. But if these people are as scary as they are, in the fact which we know they are, these powers that be, this spider web of bureaucracy, but really there's about 3 or 4 big people that are putting all of this stuff in motion. Of course they would get you to violate and do the most anti-sacred thing you could ever do, right? Which is, Heath is basically, they go to this, for anybody who's, maybe lost at this part of the book or something. Franz Pokler is given this kind of like weekend holiday at this place called Zwölfkinder, which is like a kind of a play on like pedophilia Disneyland. Basically, is like just this kind of like weird place where grown men are walking around with little kids, which we know that doesn't happen anywhere in the world, so don't even look into it. But there was a big kind of Disneyland thing, and the girl is clearly there to like have sex with him, and he's the whole time he's going, this isn't my daughter, but I've been putting my head down and working all of these years, so it could be my daughter. These are formative years for her. I mean, you see it, right? You've seen a kid, like a family member, where you're like, I haven't seen that kid in 2 years and he's like 6 feet tall now, like it's kind of a rationalization that you and I could have, but really this is like a hyper rationalization, because damn well that isn't. Right. In my opinion, I don't think he's rationalizing that it is or isn't his daughter. I think it isn't. But the fact that he was able to be put in a situation by Weissman to have sex with this woman that is being told is his daughter, and to rape and violate her, and it's gross, it's and all that stuff, that just means like, I've got you. What is your number one goal as a father? To do your kids no harm and put your kids in no harmful situations. So now, not only has his daughter been what we think is a wall's length away of being raped and tortured, right? And now there's a passage here that I'll just read before I kick it over to you about Pokler, and this one chilled me to the core. And this is about it. It says, for months, while her father across the wire or the walls did his dutiful hack work, she had been a prisoner only a few meters away from him, beaten, perhaps violated. If he must curse Weissman, then he must also curse himself. Weissman's cruelty was no less resourceful than Pokler's own engineering skill. The gift of Daedalus that allowed him to put as much labyrinth as required between himself and the inconveniences of caring. They had also sold him convenience, so much of it, all on credit, and now they were collecting. Which, yeah, like that's exactly what's happening here. It's just this, like, people get it, oh, that's not his daughter, or that is his daughter. It doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter. Like, if you were a judge, you'd be like, well, it's a little bit worse if it's your daughter, but you're also still a pedophile. But for us, we're thinking, like, not only did I get you to believe that this random girl I placed in your room is your daughter, or at least just settle with the idea, the truth that could be it, you fell for the trap. I mean, you fell for the trap and you did it, and you went along with all of this. And I convinced you to build a bomb that's just going to like destroy anything that you know as the current world, while your daughter's being tortured in the next room over there. You have nothing. You are nothing, but Weissman talks to him in this way of like, oh, you're my guy, man. I love you, dude. You're the man. Like, I need you for this, but also not really. You're just like an ant carrying something for me.
Yeah, I love that phraseology there. That as much labyrinth as required between himself and the inconveniences of caring. I think Pynchon does such a great job of presenting to us an archetypical Nazi. Mm-hmm. And Pokler is so and also we spoke about it last episode with Lenny Pokler, mm-hmm. his wife. She's also like prototypically a woman of that period involved in the Nazi Party.
Yeah.
Because it's this idea of putting so much, the mental gymnastics that it takes to actually involve yourself in something so profane and so horrific, but also to keep a normal life going. That's why Lenny Pokler is such a pivotal character, because she's kind of keeping a sort of, being a good Frau, and at the same time, it's like you know, she's got this sort of normal every woman vibe about her, you know, and she distances herself from Pokler, and then Pokler as well is, you know, he's a scientist, he's a rationalist,
Yeah.
you know, he really Pynchon's just doing his version of the question that's been asked and is still being asked, and we can't answer from the Holocaust, and that is, how can a nation of profound rationalists who've been through all the fruits of the Enlightenment and imbibed humanism from the cradle, how can those people then do something as absolutely barbarous as the Holocaust? And you know, that's what Pynchon's is saying. There are mental labyrinths we can set up that just push away the idea that the other person's a human being, and even in Pokler's case, that my daughter is a human being.
Yeah,
because, I mean, I think you know, any reading of the novel, I think that Elsa is being tortured and raped in the camp. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And he knows that.
Yeah, they wouldn't let her out. They wouldn't let her out. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. That's why it's dubious with. I mean, and he even said, I mean, it's how they let her out. You know, it's like a summertime, and they go to a summer holiday, and it's just a bit too convenient. But there has been some debate. How much, I don't know, and where it is at the moment, I don't know. But there has been debate. Like, there's some critics who say that there actually is no. There was no rape. It didn't happen. It was in Pokler's head. It was a sort of fever dream brought on by guilt. I don't buy it. I don't
either.
No. There's other folk who say, you know, it's an agent dressed as his daughter, you know, who he's playing out this fantasy on, because he's certainly very enthusiastic about what he does to this, who could be his daughter, may not be. When I first read it, you know, I thought that he was paranoid, but you know, going back over it, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, maybe I might fall down on the side that it is an agent, in the same way as agents are being used to sort of to play with Slothrop sexually as well, sort of coming in and you know, putting on a game of attraction so that they can pull him into their world. And it's basically blackmail play as well. It's like, if they can make him do this really compromising thing to anyone, to an agent, to someone who thought he was his daughter, then they've basically got him for life, and they can hold him. They can make him continue this work. But, you know, I think I agree with you. I think the kernel of it, I agree that it actually doesn't matter. It's the ambiguity that's important. Because, you know, Pokler is kind of like Chicherin, like we were talking about earlier. You know, Chicherin's there as part of the Literacy Bureau. And Pokler is this really, you know, scientific. He's involved in a Newtonian way of looking at the world. His physics are Newtonian, in a time in which quantum physics is beginning to burst out into the consciousness, and to actually say, well, no, actually, we don't live in a world of straight cause and effect, and we don't live in a world where it's only waves or particles. It can be wavicles, wavy particles are partically waves.
Ambiguity for sure.
Ambiguity. So it's this sort of thing. How he sees his daughter, it's the fact that it's open to all sorts of interpretations, is that sort of thing that Pokler can't assimilate that into his mind, she could be both, and maybe
either way you're going to do it.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, either way you're going to do it, whether it is your daughter or whether it isn't your daughter. Let's say right now we look up at the sky and we notice it's like yellow, right, or something, and we're just like, that's something weird's going on with the sky. And then someone comes up to you, maybe let's say it's your boss, comes up to you, goes, it's blue, and you go, I don't know, man, it looks pretty yellow. They're like, it's blue, what's wrong with you? You know, and it's like, it's almost a gaslighting situation. It's an overused term, but I think it applies here. And just the idea is, I've convinced you this, I've convinced you this, I've convinced you this, and now I can convince you to do that. You know, and that's like, it's this stage of like, it's this vulgar display of power.
The vulgar display of power, and it works because, like, Pokler is what makes Pokler. What's so dark and pathetic about Pokler, and that was the words that came to me when I first read it. I was like, this is such a dark, pathetic story, and I think what makes it so like that is he's so brainwashed. He lives his whole, you know, like you said at the beginning of this section, you know, he gets his head down, he does his work. He's involved in a sort of branch of science that doesn't really allow him to question very much. He's just a mechanical. He's very mechanical himself in his process of dealing with information, and so he's pivotal in the Holocaust. Without him and people like him, the Holocaust wouldn't happen.
Yeah,
and yet he has no actual experience of the Holocaust. So he knows it by like rumor, and there's a great horrible scene when he actually enters the camp for the first time, and he enters the camp just before it's liberated by American forces, and he sees for the first time the Holocaust, and he's absolutely appalled and disgusted at what he sees, because what he sees, I mean, it's a sort of, I think he sees all his crimes there in front of him so plainly, because there's a sort of, the description is a disgusting one, but an excellently made one of the bodies of the people from the camps who have been killed, and there is a strange dimension to these bodies. You know, there is the fact that their bodies have been completely destroyed, you know, through starvation, through torture. And then, though, there's a sexual element because it mentions the men's penises.
Yeah, always. He always has to let you know, which is odd. That's how he toys with you in the book a little bit. Like I think we talked about this the first one. He writes all of the pedophilia scenes as erotic. All of them. He writes them as erotic, and it's not. I don't think. And again, we don't know who Thomas Pynchon is really, so like we can't. I tend to think he's not for it, but he is participating in the own inversion of all of morals and stuff, because you think about it, right there, he's a wall away from that camp the whole time.
From the 5 to the 6, we be in the mix with that red candy paint job on the whip. I need food for the kids, money for the rent. Fuck a lockdown, baby, kids run shit.
Now, realistically, if you found out your daughter was in that camp, you would at least try to chip away at that wall, right? A little bit Shawshank Redemption style. You'd think you would, right? So. Like, or go, you know what? Firing squad me right now, because I won't do this. But Pynchon is playing, especially with a guy who worked at Boeing, right? Worked in defense, you know, to what degree we don't know, but he's probably seen and heard a few things that we don't have access to. I think that's fair to say. I think he had a high security clearance, higher than you or I. And I think he's met this type of guy a lot of times. Now, what is he doing these exact same things? Probably not. But I think he's like, I know guys that would do this. And I know, and it's a way bigger number than you think. Right. And any atrocity that happens in the world is not usually just one guy. Right. Like, it's one guy, like this all powerful Weissman, where people look in his eyes and they see exactly what they want to see or what they don't want to see. And he's just this magical element of eyes, you know, of Weissman and stuff. And you know, he talks about how these people can fall for these kinds of things. And, you know, caught up in all of this, too. I know later, and we'll talk about this in the third episode in depth, but that Buddy the Bulb thing, which is kind of goofy, but also like really, I think it really fits in the book. I think the light bulb in that place that was flashing is Buddy the Bulb, right? That was in that little thing. I thought that was it was interesting to bring that back to there, where it's like there was somebody that saw it for what it was the whole time. There was what we are to believe is a sentient conscious object, which is goofy, but it was like this kind of like plain object that was not corrupted by the world, that just looked and said, I see what you're doing, and it's disgusting, and you're a freak, you know. So,
an eye,
yeah, the all-seeing eye, yeah, absolutely.
An eye, So, and it's like when you know, Pokler actually sees it with his own eyes. You know, I think there's just a wonderful little. It's like we were talking about those labyrinths from the quote that you read out.
Yeah.
You know, they dissolve, like all these labyrinths that he had put in place. Well, at least he will probably find a way of reestablishing them, because that's what human beings do. But for that moment, at least, the labyrinths fall away, and I think it's just a few words to describe these bodies in the camps. And one of the things that struck me was it said that the faces of the people were so individual. So for the first time, he sees, this is, you know, these labyrinths I've set up to take me away from the inconveniences of care. And care just means knowing someone else is human and that they're in pain and that they're in a very individual kind of pain, and it's not abstract. In the moment of seeing them, he sees the individual faces and he realizes what he's done.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's well said. You get a lot of I think too, you know, in that same quote that we were talking about, he brings up Daedalus, and you hear there, not anything about that in particular, but what Pynchon's really good about is like hammering home a phenomena in real time, or like a problem in real time, and then being like, actually in 1600 or even ancient Greece, this happened too. Yep. V is full of stuff. Again, I don't think he does it as well in V as he does in Gravity's Rainbow, and I think he'd probably admit that himself. Like, I think Gravity's Rainbow, he kind of lands the plane or the rocket, if you will, a little bit better than he did in V, where V, I don't feel like it fully comes together. And it's his first novel. I mean, it's a big, ambitious task, but constantly in V where you're like, oh, that sucks. He goes, yeah, anyways, it's been around since. And like, it'll be a thing where like in school, you're taught, well, in 18, whatever, this is when you first hear this. He's like, actually in 1512, like this happened or whatever. And I think he kind of like, it kind of makes you go like, it kind of feels bleak when you read it. You'll be like, oh man, this is kind of a constant in humanity, isn't it? But the technology then matches that, or at least increases, and the technology and the ability to have a bigger blast radius, and I mean that metaphorically and literally, the bigger blast radius for this said human behavior really is never ending if we keep innovating without any sort of moral compass.
Yeah, absolutely. He's amazing at doing that. The long tail of history that it gives you. In fact, you know, we were talking about the Kyrgyz Light, and another place that shows up in the novel is Slothrop's remembering his ancestors. As we said last time, his ancestors were Puritans, and it was this idea that the Kyrgyz Light would be the thing that they would see before these Puritans, and you know, the beginnings of the colonial project in the Americas. They would see the Kyrgyz Light, something that's in Central Asia, and they would see it if they were damned at the moment of death. So it's this sort of like this idea, whatever it is, has always been with us, and there's a long tail of history that we're all involved in, and in that way it makes the novels quite timeless. I mean, we're still involved in it. This battle that we're having between like the technological, the literary, the didactic, the rational, and something else on the other side of it, something freer and more real in a sense. So we're in that now. So that's what makes, I think, the novels really, really very worth reading now.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump aboard the Anubis, everyone's favorite boat. It's a real fun time, real party atmosphere.
I wouldn't particularly want to jump aboard the Anubis.
I love the way it happens though, and Pynchon's the best. It's a porthole. It's always just like a little porthole, a little like thing where someone's going like, hey. And one of my favorite movies that's I think is going to get revisited in a few years because it came out at a time I don't think people really understood what it was, is Under the Silver Lake, which is very much a Thomas Pynchon book about a slacker, a millennial slacker in LA. And it's constantly just like, man, this is so confusing. And then there's a guy in the corner, very like film noir, but almost in a kind of absurdist way. It would go, hey, I know exactly what you need. Come here. You know, and it's just like a little hole in a wall that equals a huge alternate society and all of these things. And it's like kind of what you dream of achieving in your own small town. You'd be like, maybe my town is bigger than it is, you know, or maybe there's cool people behind that wall or something. Whereas Pynchon goes, actually behind that wall, it's terrible. Don't go behind the wall. And so they're running away. Margarita, Erden, and Slothric, they're all running away. It becomes this like espionage, spy versus spy aspect, which I think always is really fun. It's kind of he kind of treats you with these things and bridges concepts with these plot moments. But Slothrop hides above this board. He goes, great, I'm aboard this ship now. Thank God I'm here. It turns out it's a sex cult, disgusting, Marquis de Sade kind of like sex cult that's happening there, where children are beaten in front of everybody in like a ritualistic thing. And you realize that it's, in my opinion, got this Noah's Ark kind of concept to it, where it's like the world during the cataclysm, the select chosen few are going to ride the storm, ride the waves, ride everything. It's not going to be great, but they're going to be able to ride this. And it's the Anubis. You got like the Egyptian kind of concept to that as well. And it's gross because it ends our hero, right? Slothrop, the guy, our only chance at stopping any of this. He kind of partakes in it. You know, he kind of partakes. Not kind of. He does. He does. And you're kind of like, Slothrop, not you, man. Like, not you. And Pynchon, you know, he does that. He had. I won't say he has anti-heroes, but he has heroes that, you know, can you be a hero? That's kind of his take, I think, on a lot of these things. Is like, what is a hero? Like, if we actually put a microscope on heroes, we're going to see things that we don't like, and that's what people do whenever a famous person dies, by the way. And then when they find one little thing, they throw away their entire line of work. I'm digressing here, of course, but the Anubis, which I think is a very biblical yet Sadian biblical aspect of this book, which is terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, and it's what he's doing with Slothrop is the same as James Joyce did with Leopold Bloom. You know, it's not so much an anti-hero as just you know, throwing it in the face of anyone who would believe that there is such a thing as a hero. It's deconstructing the hero. Yeah, so Slothrop is capable of doing anything that anyone else is capable of, and he shows us it very clearly in this this disgusting scene, because it's like I think like by this point you've already seen the Ernest Pudding Domina Nocturna scene, and as we discussed last time, it's like that's a hard read. You know, when you're reading that, you're like, oh no, stop now, you're going too far, right? And then you've already had France and Elsie Pokler, and that's a very short, sharp, brutal scene as well, and the fact that it's rape and incest, and it's hard to read, right? But I think once you get to this actually is probably the hardest scene. I remember thinking it when I read it the first time. I thought, most readers at this point will, if they've got this far, will say, right, this is the one that goes too far, perhaps, because it's just so dark. I mean, it's like the Margarita is the mother of this Bianca girl, and they've brought her on, and they beat her before raping her, and they also, the interesting thing that sort of triangulates, because I think all the abuse in this novel, it's all sort of associated in a sort of mad spider web of abuse with all the other abuse. Because you've got Margarita, who
Slothrop's not getting in on the ground floor of any of this.
Absolutely not. No one is, and it's all like it's all associated with past abuse, because Margarita was abused during the silent era of German Expressionist film. Right.
Wait, let me stop you real fast, because I really like that one part. Pynchon does it so well, because they're not chapter breaks, right? These things, he just puts these little like kind of parts on it, where there's Slothrop. I can't remember how it is, but there's like Slothrop's having sex the girl with the I think it's Margarita or something like that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like the chapter breaks and like the name changes a little bit, and it's like and then there's like still more sadistic torture. That's one of the craziest chapter breaks in there. And this is before all of this. This is when they first embark on their adventure, and then go to the Anubis. But yeah,
and
please.
You're right. It's an amazing little sequence when he first meets Margarita. Slothrop does, and they start having sex.
Yeah,
and it's sort of right. But why are they having such rough, crazy sex? And then it sort of breaks off to, well, why is that? It's because Margarita's sort of operating on trauma from having been a young girl in early German cinema, and like this place where we have perhaps a lot more defined boundaries between like what's pornographic, what's not pornographic. What we get, the picture that Pynchon gives us of that era of German cinema is a real free for all, and whether it was or wasn't, this is Pynchon's idea that he gives us. And Margarita is sort of pulled in and abused, but it's this sort of, it's over the cover of art or cinema.
Sure.
Because we're filming it and because you're playing a character, then it's okay. It's not abuse, and it just reminds us of everything that is coming out now. The P. Diddy debacle and Harvey Weinstein and things like that. Those areas of scandal and about Hollywood cinema and the music industry now and things like that. All those stories that are coming out are sort of what Pynchon is addressing here. How you can, if you're famous, if you have an industry behind you, then you can cover up abuse in some way. And that happens with Margarita. And then when she's abusing her daughter Bianca on the Anubis, the interesting thing, and it might slip by some people, they make her sing on the good ship Lollipop. Right, so she's got to sing on the good ship, and you think this is a weird ritual. She sings on the good ship Lollipop, and then they beat her and rape her. And the references to Shirley Temple, because Shirley Temple had the famous song on the good ship Lollipop, and Shirley Temple was a known victim of child abuse in the Hollywood system of rough, not far off the same time as Margarita. So it's this idea, what they're saying is that the early German cinema, early Hollywood cinema, maybe Hollywood cinema now, maybe German cinema now, maybe just art is being used as a cover for abuse always. And it brings us back to the beginning of the whole conversation and Chicherin and saying, oh no, all I'm trying to do is make you more literate. People have
I see.
No, you're not. You're actually abusing us and destroying our system that we've already got and using it as a cover for exploitation. And this is sort of art used as a cover for exploitation. And this net of abuse just gets more and more complicated because you realize when Slothrop's got a really weird relationship with Bianca. When he abuses her in this way, he's also seeing her as a vehicle out of his trauma and his abuse
for sure
at the hands of Laszlo Jamf, because he's a childhood abuse victim. So it's that sort of abuse feeding into abuse constantly.
Yeah. And then Margarita takes her abuse to like a new level, because I couldn't get a read on whether this was like real or kind of this is kind of something I think was kind of ambiguous, but some people might disagree, and people that have read it multiple times might be able to prove this wrong. But she had that whole thing of like dragging kids into like the sinking mud pits and stuff, like that whole aspect of it. It's like, and it's like you just realize like this is kind of how it's made. This is how you make these things. Like they don't just appear up like evil entities overnight. Maybe there was a genesis where that happened, but Pynchon goes, hey, keep expanding the history books. You tell me when it started. You know what I mean? We can go back to Shakespeare if you want. Like Shirley Temple. Let's go back to Shakespeare. Let's go back to let's go to all these things. It's happening everywhere. Like this is this way, and maybe to some people that like is demoralizing, but he's kind of like, hey, it takes your free will to actively buck this stuff, to actively resist it.
100%. It's this sort of, and this is an important thing. Like that, we said that Pynchon's very left wing in a certain sense. Maybe not. Maybe he wouldn't be fashionably left wing today, but he certainly is.
I don't think not with this book.
But he's a left wing person, and it's that sort of it's a Marxist desire to break away from history, to stop history, because we're caught in this net of abuse that has predated all of us and always will. And can we break away from it with, like you're saying, like free will? Now that's a whole different argument whether it's free will that does that or not. But there needs to be something that breaks the chain of history, you know. And I think Pynchon's interested in that. And what's interesting is, I mean, you said going back in that long tail of history, where does the abuse begin? There's an interesting point. Slothrop also sexually abuses a pig in this novel. And
that's right.
That's very important, because as we discussed in the last episode, his ancestor, the Puritan William Slothrop, was very interested in sheep as a representation of Christ and the redeemed, and pigs as a representation of the damned. So that's just shown us that this sexual abuse of people who are in the position where they're easier to sexually abuse, you're damned anyway, sort of thing, or you're already abused, you know, that sort of thing. That goes right back to his Puritan ancestry. So it is a big long tail of history, and you never get to the start of it.
Yeah, my gosh, I know it's just like that. And it's funny when you talk about the Marxist reading of it. And I know a lot of his fans are like probably dyed in the wool Marxists, or at least at one point in their life were. And I think what's funny, and it's always whenever I hear people, and I'm not saying they're wrong about interpreting his stuff is very left wing, but at his endings of his books kind of go like, you're kind of like waiting for all right, so what do we do if you're a Marxist, right? Like you're reading it, what do we do? And he just goes, I don't know. No. He's like, I have no idea. Like, so it's kind of this like, and that's why when you read this, I think the proper read on Pynchon is like, look, there are these systems that exist. There are these things, and they've always have. Perhaps it is human nature. And that might be why he leaned on, especially back in the 60s and all this stuff, leaned on more the progressive side. However, he saw the way the progressive side moved, which is when you read Inherent Vice, you're like, okay, like, that kind of like party's over. What do we do now kind of thing. Yeah. And he's kind of going, look, it's kind of like, he'd love to have some collective resistance to it, but it's really hard because the collective you're resisting is rooted and more on a common understanding than these sub factions that are resisting something. The sub factions are the people that we constantly divide. When you're resisting something, there's a kind of this tendency that humans have to divide yourself, the narcissism of small differences, all of these things. And you see that throughout a lot of Pynchon's novels. It's like, well, so-and-so, this happened. I was laughing. I was watching this movie, Licorice Pizza, the Paul Thomas Anderson movie. Paul Thomas Anderson has absolutely read a lot of Thomas Pynchon novels. We know this for a fact. And he's adapting one that comes out in like a month. And he was saying that novel, that movie is a romance between an older woman and a young boy, and however, the boy is a little bit more mature than the girl. Or at least he's like, they kind of like meet in the middle age wise, and they have all of these schemes, and they all sound like a Pynchon side plot that would last like 10 pages is what the book is like. It's these kid that learns that pinball machines are now legal in California. So he starts his own pinball machine business, and he's selling water beds before that. And there's drugs involved and all of these things. And it's just like these small side plots that would last 10 pages in a Pynchon novel have all of these falling outs and disagreements, whereas the power you're resisting most of the time, they're saying absolutely not, like, we know what our goal is. And it's like, so I think Pynchon is like, unfortunately, he doesn't really, for if you're looking to get an answer from Pynchon, like, what do I do? I'm trying to resist this. He kind of goes, I can just tell you what you're up against.
Yeah. And in that sense, he's part of a tradition too, because I mean, the famous saying from Marx is, it's not enough to describe the world. The point is to change it.
Yeah.
Sort of glossing them a bit there, but that sort of idea. You must be actional. But then there've been lots of people who have taken Marx very seriously,
Right.
but they've actually said to themselves, "I don't know how you change it, and I don't know how you don't make things worse." So Merleau-Ponty is actually a very good example. He was sort of ousted by people like Jean-Paul Sartre because he really, if you sort of simplify everything he was saying, he was basically saying, I can only really describe the world. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to make action in it. So I'm just going to leave it at, and I think Pynchon's doing a similar thing. I think he's taking that art, and that's, in a sense, isn't that kind of the artist's role in a sense?
Right.
To diagnose the problem. You mentioned Faulkner earlier. I see Faulkner doing this and Faulkner comes under so much attack really these days for saying, but you didn't try and solve any of these problems, or you didn't give prescriptions for how they might be solved, or the social problems of Jim Crow, or for instance, you described them, but you didn't tell us how to fix them, or you didn't attempt to fix them enough yourself. And I think at a certain point you have to think that there is a place in society for the artist persona who comes out and he says, or she says, what I'm going to do is I'm going to describe to you the world as it stands.
Yeah.
Maybe with that good sight on the issue, then maybe other people can find ways out of it, or out of this labyrinth that we happen to find ourselves in. But first, a clear description is required. And maybe that's more what art's for than coming up with manifestos.
Yeah, art as disclosure, right? Like, it's kind of disclosure in a way. Like, hey, this is I've seen it. This is what's happening. And I think with Pynchon, it's like we have to believe that, there's, there's all these pictures. I love the Thomas Pynchon fan community. It's my favorite because they're like, is that him at the Neil Young concert? Is that him at the Ithaca, California?
And it never is.
It never is. But then also, I'm always like, does he exist?
Yeah, it might
is
not.
he a collective? Is he an artist collective? Like, but it's fun. I hope to not get the answer. Just like his novels, you don't want the answer, when you read his novels, and that's why a lot of people put him down after 2 pages, like because they might want the answer, and you realize you're like, I don't even know what's happening on the page, So it's just I love it. I think he's one of the most fun authors like ever. Last thing we're going to talk about on this installment here is the submarine double exposure scene, which I think is really cool. I think it's great. I love that Pynchon is able to be this like kind of high concept, all this stuff, but then like he always reverts back to, and his generation grew up with this, like kind of like cowboys and Indians, kind of spy versus spy, just classic like adventure novels, but then he injects the high concept into them. Some of these plot lines. Now, for what's happening here is we get our friend Pig Bodine. If you've read V, he's a big part of that. I'd argue he might even be a bigger part of Gravity's Rainbow. To be honest, like I'd have to see, but he's a very, very big part of this novel. He's kind of like this druggy bag handler, kind of like, I know where this is hidden, I know where that's hidden, and there's a submarine scene which is happening, which we talked about in the first one, of the Argentinians commandeering a submarine, and there's a part where there's an attack happening, and I have to say, I have to give credit to this Substack that I think, along with what we're doing here, but in terms of like what's happening, like if you're just confused on what's happening in a certain part and you don't want to go on, there is the Exegesis of Thomas Pynchon, which is a Substack. The guy does a really good job of telling you what's happening without telling you what to think about it. I mean, he does put his thoughts into there, and you can see where his leanings are. But for the most part, like you are able to be like, oh, I get it. That was happening. Ah, okay. And then fit it into how you're already feeling about this book. He's currently in process of doing Mason and Dixon. I think chapter by chapter kind of thing. It's really, really good. I highly suggest. It really helped me out a few times in this novel just to go, I see. Okay, this happened here. Because Pynchon can be a little muddy in terms of that with these things. But there's a time modulation effect of this. Onirine, I don't even know how to say it, but it's like Onirine. Onirine, something like that. It's this drug that's a double exposure drug. Now, double exposure, you'll see, happens in the Margarita Erdmann origin story, because she's working under Gerhard von Goll, who basically wants to do double exposure. And like you think, oh, it's a film tactic. It's all of this. It serves an even bigger purpose in this novel, and a more nefarious one, I should say, because Von Gull is talking to these Argentinian rebels, right? These people who would actually, you would think of these people of picking up Thomas Pynchon and going, "What's the answer?" at the end of it. Like you could see them being the reader we were just talking about, and they, Von Gull is like, "Hey, I am a filmmaker. I'm a classic filmmaker." You picture him like this. Just what like Lenny Riefenstahl, like these people that despite you could hate them for all this stuff, they're still using the lighting stuff that she came up with. Like they're just a genius, an objective genius, right? For people in film. So they're thinking, hey, he wants to tell this classic folk story. Now he wants to water it down though, which we see a lot of times. We see a lot of like folk heroes or even real heroes, their stories watered down to support the current thing, the current ideology. And that's exactly what's happening here. And also with the use of drugs, that's also what happens in almost every Thomas Pynchon novel. The drugs sound fun. They're not like James Ellroy drugs where everybody's like sweating in a room and mad at each other. Like these Thomas Pynchon things, they start out as very fun, but you end up in a very scary, like Orson Welles, like Mirror House. Like it's very you learn a little too much about the world, and then you learn why you're taking these drugs. So I thought that the whole like 60s, they blow up a submarine or there's an attack on a submarine, yet they realize they're not actually in the same area as the submarine that they're either running from or attacking or something. And then, but their actions still do have consequences in real time, where they blow up a submarine and it's like some North African guys or something. And they just like blow up a North African thing. And then they're like, oh shit, we thought we were doing this. And that kind of, you picture this book. This book is written in the 70s or the 60s. Who knows how long he was working on it for, but it was written during a very pivotal time, though it takes place years and years before that. But you realize that's the 60s countercultural movement. There are people that thought they were doing this, but really they were maybe, some people say, not doing a damn thing, or actually aiding power of taking over. Like they actually were. That's what people say with the controlled opposition, Dave McGowan, Weird Scenes, Laurel Canyon aspect of it. And I just thought that was a great thing. It's like, okay, you thought you were doing this in real time, and he puts it in a very fun submarine chase scene. But your actions weren't nothing. They weren't nothing. They weren't all for naught. You blew up something that was it good or bad? You might not know, but you did the intended result did not happen, and it was actually destructive. And this is kind of this like but then it's also using this mind expansion drug, this mind expansion. We're expanding, when really it's like this drug probably is just not probably is this drug that provides a function that gets you to support the current 5-0 rocket world. Like that is where the rocket is God. The rocket is able to erase and begin new life. That's what all of this is for. You're not just having fun with your friends doing drugs in a house, reading, Karl Marx and putting your fist in the air. That's not what you're doing, and I thought that was a very interesting part of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's a lot of like conversation about how much is Pynchon satirizing the
for sure
movement or any left-wing movement of his time. How much is he poking fun at that? And a novel like Vineland is a very that's the one, the film adaptation.
I'm reading that very soon. Yeah, I can't wait. Mm-hmm.
And that's because that kind of, there's a sort of mocking. There's a mockery of the movements, of the hippie movement in there, but also I think I would probably say it. How across all the novels, if you sort of think about what he might be doing, I think he's very invested in the ethics of the left. He's very invested in their MO. He's very invested in the ends of the movement. He's very interested in, but I think he does satirize or poke fun at the manifestations of how that's done and how It's like it's a much more difficult process, or a much more difficult undertaking to change the world than many people assume. You know, in this sort of the sort of hippie movement. I mean, they said there's a wonderful. I don't remember who said it, but there's a little quip about the hippie movement, which was, you know, if you went to San Francisco in 1960, you would go with flowers in your hair.
Mhm.
If you went by 1970, you would have to have a loaded revolver.
Dirty Harry versus, you know, that's like the
Yeah.
Dirty Harry movie, basically.
Dirty
And
Harry movie, yeah.
George Harrison said the same. George Harrison, you know, he's thinking like, man, these people love Sergeant Pepper out here. Like, this is a massive. They finally go, and he said it looked like a Hieronymus Bosch painting.
Yeah.
It
So
was
it's-
like, well, this is not what I thought it was. Yeah.
So I think Pynchon is very cognizant of that, and he's realizing that, like, with the best will in the world, you know, something that the flower power movement, you know, that's come under, like, lots of postmodernists have taken that movement, the flower power movement and the free love movement, and said it sounds lovely, its effects might not be what you expect them to be. So that's sort of going on here, I think. You know, I mean, there's a character El Nato in there who and on the U-boat, who says he says to the other seamen on the U-boat, he says, a man must always go forward, looking life directly in the face, and he even capitalizes life as though one could, you know, go directly forward, looking life in the face. It's that sort of thing we were talking about the Marxist actional change the world, call to change the world. It's as though that were possible for human beings, and, you know, maybe it is possible. It's extraordinarily hard. And there have been theorists who have said it isn't possible, right? So it's that sort of thing I think he's getting at there. There's a character, these people on the U-boat have this really sort of binary understanding, like, so to sit back and do nothing, that doesn't work. We need to do something. So they're getting involved in psychedelics and things like that. That's their movement, but they don't realize. I think what the whole passage shows is they don't realize that if you're going to face the world, you're not facing a straightforward thing. When you look at the world, it's so complex. It's all over the place.
Yeah,
and this, it's messy. It's both and. It's not an either or thing you're looking at. So that Pynchon shows us through things like this time dilation that he does. You know, this speeding up, slowing down time, matching different timelines. You know, two different timelines that shouldn't coexist. They come together, and this happens with the U-boat, and they blow up the wrong bloody boat, right? He also does it in Against the Day all the time. You know, there's always these, like, a train that you know, the two trains go through one another because they're traveling on different time zones, different. Yeah. So it's this sort of concept, I think, and it's like what we're talking about with this concept of the Kyrgyz light. You know, that is actual experiential reality, and actual experiential reality is fluid, changing, complex, messy, weird, and there's no possibility of saying, right, well, I've found the perfect sort of discrete political way of dealing with this problem, or even, you know, I'm just going to drop acid, that'll do it.
Yeah, well, because it's also a struggle between, like what I said earlier. It's like, okay, this guy Von Gall wants to tell our story. Like, that's what we were waiting for. The folk hero to come in, right? Like, we were waiting for the folk hero to come in and blast this story out to everybody. Everyone's going to hear it. We can't do this on our own. And if one guy says, I don't know about that guy, man. Like, I mean, you see who he's dealing with? Like they might go, well, dude, like, what, like, come on, man. Like, how is it going to work? So, like, we're in this rush for progress, when really, like, not everything is a progressive move, right? Like, not everything that you do. In fact, it could be highly regressive. And, you know, that's why I'm sorry, like, what we're taught in history, a lot of times, it's like, you kind of got to peel back the layer. Like, you are getting the Von Gall version sometimes, of these stories. And, like, you know, there's the as humans, we're kind of blessed and cursed with nuance, right? I don't think a lot of animals have nuance the way we do, right? I think there's a little bit of it. Like you might have a pet dog and be like, oh, my dog does this. Oh, your dog does that. That's interesting. But pack animals, for the most part, people that operate as a collective, a lot of times, they don't really have that nuance, because if you do, they'll just eat you.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of times they go, that guy is way too nuanced, we should eat him, you know. And for us, we go, oh, that's just the way he is. That's all it is. And you're like, I don't think we should operate like pack animals. However, it's like the things we want to achieve are done that way, but we just cannot do it as humans. And it's kind of that's kind of just the way that saga of Gravity's Rainbow is to me.
From sort of from the directions of philosophy I've taken, the sort of it seems to me that animals, what animals lack is a symbolic sense. So, you know, we're able to say, this is the physical object, but it also has a symbolic meaning. So we're able to sort of contain in our heads, this thing is two things simultaneously. You know, it's got its physical and its symbolic, you know, and it also can have multiple symbolic meanings. So we're able to do that. And, you know, Pynchon's, I think Pynchon's playing with that here. You know, you've got the Von Gall character. He's using in his film making, he's using this thing called emulsion J, which was, funnily enough, invented by the same person that abused Slothrop, Laszlo Jamf. And it's interesting.
Oh, it's Amy Pollock's G, right? Or is it Impulsion? Yeah, because I know that's the one they shroud what's his name with at the end, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, Amy Pollock's G. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and it's got this. It's this substance, its ability. Yeah, it's visual, and again, see this thing about the visual just runs through like a red thread the whole of Pynchon, and you know this substance, it can cloak the visible self, but it can also, it's described in this sequence on the U-boat as being able to make the skin transparent. So what you've got, if Von Gall was to make his film, it would be a film that would be able to be viewed on multiple layers. Like you could almost see the layer of the skin and then the layer of the muscle and the bone underneath.
Right.
So you're seeing Pynchon's doing this thing again. And it goes right. We can see it going right back to David Hume, who said, he took in his philosophy. Okay, how do I know what this object is? If all I need to do is change the light, that's the light conditions, and I see a different object.
Like you said, when you turn the light on, in the room.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I think he's playing with. So he's saying, right, guys, you might want answers to your questions, proper political answers, but I don't think you're going to get them because life isn't that simple. Even seeing it isn't that simple.
It's true, which is tough for people who are like, we're going to change the world. And it's like, you might not be the change you want, but you might, and it's you might change the light of the world. You might change the way the world is shown, which just reminds me of like when back in the day when HD TVs and these massive, like when TVs became just like crazy big, and when boomers would get them, they would forget that I don't know why it was the default setting, but the motion smoothing would be on, and it just looked so awful. Like I feel like I'd see the key grip in the background. You're like, what is like? Don't do. And I showed my father-in-law at the time how to turn that off, and I'm like. And then he was like, "Oh, I knew there was something weird about this TV." I was like, "Yeah, it's like it kind of feels like that's what we're getting here. It's like we're seeing the key grip in the background in Gravity's Rainbow. We're seeing all of these things." And Von Gall wants to be. It's like this like faux transparency, right? Like this kind of like, that doesn't make the movie better. That I can see like all these weird, like it almost looks like I'm on set of it. Like that doesn't make the movie better. Like it's I thought that was a fascinating moment. So. Well, I guess that's episode 2, and we'll be back, guys, for episode 3. In fact, we will already be back, you guys. There will be no time waiting between that, guys. So, we'll catch you on the next one.
Like Pynchon, we're playing with time.
Thank you. That's exactly that's the sign off. I was looking for a sign off, and thank you for that.